Autumn in the City by Evelyn Merrick. The autumn rain cascaded down the windows of the small cafe on the corner of Fifth Avenue. Sofia Petrovna adjusted her scarf and sipped her coffee, watching the droplets race each other down the glass. Her dark eyes followed a particularly large drop as it absorbed smaller ones in its path, growing stronger as it descended. Much like life, she thought, we gather experiences that shape us along our journey. At 32, Sofia had built a successful career as an art curator at one of New York's prestigious galleries, but personal fulfillment remained elusive. Her last relationship had ended nearly a year ago, leaving behind a familiar emptiness she'd grown accustomed to but never comfortable with. She glanced at her watch, almost 6. The exhibition opening was at 7:30, and she still needed to ensure all final arrangements were perfect. Sofia drained her cup, left a generous tip, and stepped out into the rain, umbrella unfurling above her as she merged into the hurried stream of pedestrians. Across town, Alexander Hamilton, no relation to the founding father, as he often joked, straightened his tie for the 3rd time. The mirror reflected a tall man with broad shoulders and kind brown eyes that squinted at the corners when he smiled. Tonight's charity gala wasn't his usual scene, but his friend Marcus had insisted he come. "You can't hide in your studio forever," Marcus had said last week over lunch. "You're becoming as isolated as your photographs." Alexander couldn't argue. His work as a documentary photographer took him to remote corners of the world, capturing the truth of human experience through his lens. But lately he'd been turning down assignments, preferring the solitude of his darkroom to the chaos of foreign streets. "Fine," he'd finally agreed. "One night, one charity event, then you leave me alone for a month." Now, as he slipped on his watch, his father's old Omega, the only possession of his he'd kept, Alexander wondered what he'd gotten himself into. The Waverly Gallery buzzed with anticipation. Sofia moved efficiently through the space, making last-minute adjustments to lighting and positioning. The exhibition featured emerging artists exploring themes of connection and isolation in modern urban life, a subject that resonated with her personally. "Everything looks perfect," said Natasha, her assistant. "The caterers are set up, the musicians are in place, and the first guests should arrive soon." Sofia nodded appreciatively. "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you." As she retreated to her small office to change into her evening attire, Sofia felt the familiar flutter of pre-event nerves. These openings were crucial for the gallery's reputation and the artists' careers. More than that, they were a testament to her eye for talent and ability to curate meaningful conversations through art. The rain had stopped by the time Alexander arrived at the glass-fronted building. A banner above the entrance announced "Connections, New Perspectives on Urban Solitude." He hesitated at the entrance, then showed his invitation to the attendant and stepped inside. The gallery was already filling with New York's art enthusiasts and social elite. Waiters glided between clusters of guests, offering champagne. Alexander accepted a glass and moved toward the nearest installation. A series of photographs showing individuals in crowded city spaces, each subject isolated by a halo of light amid the blur of surrounding movement. He leaned closer, studying the technique, appreciating the composition. The photographer had captured something he recognized, the paradoxical loneliness that exists in densely populated spaces. "The artist used a customized lens to create that effect," a voice said beside him. Alexander turned to find a woman with intelligent eyes and an elegant posture considering the same photograph. Her dark hair was gathered in a simple updo, and she wore a deep burgundy dress that complemented her olive complexion. "It's remarkable," he replied. "The technical skill is impressive, but it's the emotional truth that strikes me. I felt exactly like these subjects, surrounded yet separate." She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious features. "That's precisely what Carlotta was aiming for. I'm Sofia, by the way. I curated this exhibition." Alexander Hamilton, he introduced himself, expecting the usual reaction. "Not the founding father, I presume?" Her eyes twinkled with amusement. He laughed, surprised by her easy humor. "No relation, though my mother was quite the history enthusiast." "Well, non-founding father Alexander, what brings you to our opening tonight?" Their conversation flowed naturally as Sofia guided him through the exhibition, explaining the themes and introducing him to several artists. Alexander found himself sharing insights from his own photography experience, and Sofia listened with genuine interest. "You should show me your work sometime," she said as they paused before a sculpture of interconnected wire figures reaching toward each other without quite touching. "I'd like that," he replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. Later, as the evening slowed down and the last guests departed, Alexander lingered, helping Sofia collect empty glasses from around the gallery. "You don't have to do this," she protested, though not very firmly. "I know," he said simply, "but I want to." When the cleaning crew arrived, Sofia and Alexander found themselves standing outside the gallery in the cool night air. "Would you like to get some coffee?" he asked. "I know a place that stays open late." Sofia hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." They walked several blocks to a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop. The cafe was warm and inviting, with soft jazz playing and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Over coffee, they discovered shared interests in literature and film, debated the merits of digital versus film photography, and exchanged stories of their travels. Sofia described her childhood in St. Petersburg before her family moved to America when she was 12. Alexander spoke of his journeys through Southeast Asia and South America, documenting the lives of people in remote villages. "What made you become a photographer?" Sofia asked, wrapping her hands around her mug. Alexander considered the question thoughtfully. "I've always been an observer. As a child, I was quiet, watching everything around me. My grandmother gave me my first camera when I was 10, and suddenly I had a way to capture what I saw, to preserve moments that seemed important." He paused, his expression softening with memory. "There was this moment when I was 16. I photographed an elderly couple sitting on a park bench. They weren't doing anything spectacular, just sitting together, her head on his shoulder, watching the sunset. But when I developed that photograph, I saw something I hadn't noticed in the moment, the way his hand held hers, the gentle curve of her smile. There was a lifetime of love captured in that simple gesture." Sofia listened, captivated by his passion and the gentle cadence of his voice. "That's when I knew," he continued. "I wanted to preserve those truthful moments. Not the posed, perfect versions of life, but the authentic connections and emotions that often go unnoticed." "That's beautiful," Sofia said softly. "It's not unlike what I try to do as a curator, finding artists whose work speaks truth, then creating a space where others can encounter that truth." By the time they left the cafe, the streets were nearly empty, and the first hints of dawn colored the eastern sky. They walked slowly, neither wanting the night to end. "I have an early flight tomorrow," Alexander said reluctantly as they reached the corner where they would part ways. "I'm heading to Chicago for a short assignment." Sofia nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "When will you return?" "Thursday," he replied. "Would you have dinner with me on Friday?" Her smile returned. "I'd enjoy that very much." 3 days later, Alexander found himself standing outside Sofia's apartment building, a small bouquet of wildflowers in hand. He had chosen them carefully, avoiding the cliché of roses in favor of something more unique and natural. Sofia opened the door wearing a simple blue dress that accentuated her graceful figure. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and her smile at seeing him sent a warmth through his chest. "These are for you," he said, offering the flowers. "They're beautiful," she replied, inhaling their subtle fragrance. "Come in while I put them in water." Her apartment reflected her personality, tasteful, elegant, with carefully selected art pieces adorning the walls. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on art history, photography, and Russian literature. Large windows overlooked the city, capturing its nighttime brilliance. "Your place suits you," Alexander observed, examining a small bronze sculpture on a side table. "Thank you," Sofia replied, returning with the flowers arranged in a slender vase. "I've been here 5 years now. It's become my sanctuary from the chaos of the city." They dined at a small Italian restaurant where the owner greeted Sofia by name and ushered them to a quiet corner table. Over handmade pasta and robust wine, they continued the conversation begun days earlier, delving deeper into their pasts, their aspirations, their views on life and love. "My last relationship ended because he couldn't understand my devotion to my work," Sofia confessed as they shared tiramisu. "He wanted me to be more available, more conventional perhaps." Alexander nodded in understanding. "I've had similar experiences. My lifestyle isn't conducive to traditional relationships. Being away for weeks or months at a time, sometimes in places with no reliable communication, it takes a particular kind of understanding to accept that." "Yet you keep searching," Sofia observed, studying his expression. We're all searching, aren't we? For connection, for meaning. He met her gaze. For someone who sees us as we truly are. Their evening extended into a walk through the nearby park, illuminated by antique lamps casting pools of light along the pathways. They stopped by a fountain where the water danced and sparkled in the lamplight. "I leave for Myanmar next month," Alexander said, breaking a comfortable silence. "It's a 3-week assignment documenting the lives of textile artisans in remote villages." Sofia turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "That sounds fascinating. Their traditions must be incredible." "They are," he agreed, then hesitated before adding, "I've been thinking. This might sound impulsive, but would you consider coming with me? Not for the entire time, perhaps, but for a week. The landscapes are breathtaking, and there's a traditional festival happening that would interest you from an artistic perspective." The invitation hung between them, unexpected and tantalizing. Sofia's mind raced with practical considerations, work obligations, preparations, the sheer spontaneity of such a decision. Yet something deeper pulled at her, an intuition that this opportunity represented more than just a trip. "I would need to arrange coverage at the gallery," she said slowly. "And there's the exhibition in Chelsea I'm scheduled to oversee." Alexander waited, making no attempt to persuade her one way or the other. Finally, Sofia smiled. "Yes," she said decisively. "Yes, I'll come." The weeks before their departure passed in a blur of planning, preparation, and deepening in connection. They saw each other almost daily, dinners at neighborhood restaurants, long walks through the city, quiet evenings in Sofia's apartment discussing art and sharing favorite books. Alexander showed Sofia his photography studio, a converted warehouse space filled with equipment and prints. She moved through the space slowly, absorbing the images from his travels, faces and landscapes from around the world, each telling a story of human experience. One photograph in particular captured her attention, a young girl in a remote Indian village, standing in a doorway with light streaming around her, her expression a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Her name is Priya," Alexander said, coming to stand beside Sofia. "She was so shy at first, hiding behind her grandmother whenever I approached. But by my 3rd day in the village, she became my unofficial guide, showing me all the secret places only children know about." Sofia touched the frame gently. "You captured her spirit beautifully." "That's the highest compliment you could give me," he replied quietly. The night before their departure, Alexander prepared dinner at his apartment, a skill Sofia discovered he possessed in abundance. As they sat on his balcony watching the city lights, a comfortable silence enveloped them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Sofia began, turning to face him. "About finding someone who sees us as we truly are." Alexander waited, allowing her the space to continue. "I've always guarded myself," she admitted, "kept a certain distance even in my closest relationships. It seemed safer that way." "And now?" he asked softly. She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "Now I'm choosing to be brave, to be seen." He leaned forward, kissing her with a gentleness that belied the intensity of his feelings. Sofia responded in kind, her hand rising to touch his face as the city hummed below them. The village in Myanmar exceeded Sofia's expectations. Nestled in a valley surrounded by mist-covered mountains, it consisted of wooden houses on stilts, connected by dirt pathways and adorned with colorful prayer flags fluttering in the breeze. Alexander worked during the days, photographing the artisans as they created intricate textiles using techniques passed down through generations. Sofia often accompanied him, fascinated by the process and forming her own connections with the villagers despite the language barrier. In the evenings, they would return to their simple accommodations, a guest house at the edge of the village with basic amenities, but a spectacular view of the surrounding landscape. They would sit on the porch, sharing observations from the day and watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. On the 5th day, the festival began. The entire village transformed with decorations and preparations. Women wore their finest traditional clothing, intricate patterns woven with gold and silver threads. Men prepared a ceremonial area in the village center, and children practiced dances they would perform. Sofia and Alexander observed the preparations with respectful interest, occasionally assisted by their guide, Toon, who explained the significance of various rituals. By nightfall, the celebration was in full swing, music from traditional instruments filling the air, dancers moving in precise, meaningful patterns, and villages sharing specially prepared foods. They're celebrating the harvest and honoring their ancestors, Toon explained as they watched. The dance tells the story of our people, our history, our connection to the land. Sofia was transfixed by the expressions of the dancers, the complete immersion in their cultural heritage, the pride and joy evident in every movement. Alexander alternated between photographing the festivities and watching Sofia's reactions, finding her wonder as compelling as the celebration itself. Later, as they walked back to their guest house under a canopy of stars more brilliant than any Sofia had seen in New York, Alexander took her hand. "Thank you for coming with me," he said simply. "Thank you for asking me," she replied, squeezing his hand. "This experience, seeing how these people maintain their traditions, their connections to each other and their past, it's made me think about what we've lost in our modern rush toward progress." "What have we lost?" he asked, curious about her perspective. "This sense of belonging," she said after a moment's reflection. "In New York, we're surrounded by millions of people, yet so many feel isolated. Here, every person has a place, a role, a connection to the community." They reached the guest house and sat on the porch steps, reluctant to go inside and end the magical evening. "I've been considering taking fewer assignments," Alexander said suddenly. "Being more selective, focusing on projects with deeper meaning rather than constant travel." Sofia turned to him, surprised. "Because of us?" "Partly," he admitted, "but also because I'm changing. What I need, what fulfills me, it's evolving. I'll always love photography, always need to capture those truthful moments, but perhaps I don't need to chase them across continents quite so relentlessly." Sofia leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I support you. Your work matters, Alexander. It shows people worlds they might never see otherwise, builds understanding across cultures." "And your work matters too," he said, kissing the top of her head. "You create spaces where art can change people, challenge them, connect them." Under the vast Myanmar sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had found in each other not just affection, but understanding, the freedom to be fully themselves while growing together. 2 months after returning to New York, Sofia and Alexander collaborated on a special exhibition at the Waverly Gallery. Titled Threads of Connection, it featured Alexander's photographs from Myanmar alongside textiles created by the artisans, arranged in context to tell the story of the community and its traditions. The opening night was a tremendous success, drawing critics and collectors from various embassies. But more meaningful to Sofia and Alexander was the presence of their friends and family, witnessing this creative fusion of their professional lives. "This is just the beginning," Alexander whispered to Sofia as they stood together watching the guests engage with the exhibition. "Of many collaborations?" Sofia smiled, understanding all that his words encompassed. "I look forward to every one of them," she replied, her hand finding his. Outside the gallery windows, autumn had returned to New York, painting the trees in brilliant colors and bringing with it the promise of change, of seasons turning as they always do, of new stories waiting to be discovered and shared. For Sofia and Alexander, it was the perfect season, a time of harvest after patient growth, of gathering close what matters most as the world prepares for renewal.